when the Muslims was in trouble, fighting early on, the first people that the Prophet Muhammad sent the Muslims to migrate and to seek help was Christian people, Christian brothers and sisters. And so when the bad people came to try to tell them to come back to Mecca, away from the Christians, the Abyssinians, then it was Abyssinia, now it's Ethiopia, my brother pastor. The leader of the Christian heard both sides, and he took his cane and he drew a line in the sand, and he said the difference between Muslims and Christians is just that thin line. So we're all brothers and sisters in this. And so when we understand that there ain't but one earth, and we'll all be doing the job, the police ourselves and police the good people together against the bad people. So I'm going to turn it back over to the pastor or to the moderator, my brother Marvin. And we're going to have to pass this around the shed.
If you will, brother, if you would do this, if you would introduce everyone and in the opening statement, pose a question to the cadets. I'm going to step out your way.
No problem, Pastor. Well, history just been made. Our pastor stepped out the way. It's the first time in my life I've ever seen that. Normally that famous thing, just one more thing. But all praise is due to Allah, and welcome to everyone, and thank you, Imam Basil, and also thank you to the Masjid Taleem community for this opportunity for us to make this presentation to you. What we like to do, because time is short, we like to go ahead and introduce our panelists, and as I call your name, just raise your hand up, and everybody see who you are. The first one is, our first panelist is Imam Basil Abdullah, who is the Imam of this particular Masjid Taleem Muhammad. And while I mention that, this particular area of the masjid that you're sitting in is the Qasim Ahmed Multi-Purpose Center. And this was built in honor of one of our imams named Imam Qasim Ahmed. Sergeant Williams probably doesn't know it, but he's supposed to be up here. And y'all know him. Also, we have Ayman Kabire. He's the president of the Islamic Society of Greater Houston. We have Tolga, Celik, the executive director of the Islamic Institute at the Turquoise Center. Joseph is not here yet. We had Salim Howze, and he's the HPD patrol officer. And also we have Imam Jaime Fletcher. He's Islam and Spanish Dawah Service to the Nation and the World Director. That's a big name, isn't it? In the world. All you're missing is the universe, brother. So what we like to do is to begin, and we like to start over here. We'll go from right to left, and we'll begin with Imam. If you hear me call him Mujahid, just forgive me, you know. But we'll start with Imam Fletcher. Well, Imam Fletcher. Yeah.
So I was supposed to relax, so I'm just going to improvise a little bit here. You know, we welcome you guys. I wish you could be sitting here, seeing what I'm seeing. You know, I grew up in Alief, Southwest Houston, and in the early 90s, it was murder capital of the world. I have friends of mine that lost limbs from drive-by shootings. I have friends of mine nowadays that have a glass eye. The right eye is a glass eye. My best friend at the age of 15 was so overwhelmed with the pressure of growing up in Alief that he shot himself. And the bullet came in with a 38. It came in and came out, and they had to cut out part of his brain. He didn't die, but he ended up on a wheelchair. And that happened in the living room of the person who I am now married to. So I know my wife since we were 12 years old growing up in Alief. There was a gang back in the days called La Familia. And I spoke to then Sheriff Adrian Garcia about this, because he was in the anti-gang task force appointed by Bob Lanier when he was mayor. And when I told him, what do you know about La Familia? He said, All I know is that they were in Alif, and we were looking for the guy who was leading that gang. And I told him, I'm that person. I was the leader of La Familia growing up. I left to Colombia, South America, after an attempt on my life. I grew up in Alif not understanding, as a Colombian from South America, what it really meant to have community relations with law enforcement. Because even though I was a quarterback, in 7th grade, walking to my middle school, I knew that linebackers were not my friends, right? If you're a quarterback, linebackers are coming for you, right, to tackle you. My first interaction with law enforcement was getting out from Kilo Middle School. And because there was too many of us to walk on the sidewalk, I was walking on the very edge of the street, and a police car came and said, get on the sidewalk, right? Screamed, assertively, commanding. We all got on the sidewalk, but we didn't fit. We left. I got back on the very edge of the street. When he came back around, he got out. I must have been 13 years old. And he grabbed me by the back of my shirt and slammed me on top of the hood. Handcuffed me and put me in the back of the cop car. That was my first interaction with law enforcement. So being a quarterback, knowing linebackers are not my friends, I said, these guys are a different type of linebackers. So that was our interaction. They're not on my side, they're not on my team. As I grew up, my parents being from Colombia, South America, come in as immigrants, as many of us do. They come to America to give us as their children a better life. In Colombia, we can sit with law enforcement and have coffee and relax and talk. Over here, they start panicking if they're gonna get pulled over. They think somebody can go to jail. So on the offset, when we look at race or color, and we say that justice is about being colorblind, that in and of itself is a problem. Because if we want to be colorblind in the context of justice, it assumes that there's an equality amongst people. But there's not really an equality, because the neighborhood where I grew up, majority African American and Latino, has a different social construct based on the economic situation happening in that neighborhood. So when you're Black or Latino, you're going through certain restraints on a day-to-day while you're dealing with family life that may be experienced systematic just from the system and what we're given, okay? My parents didn't know how to speak English. When you have a language barrier, right, and you have to have your son translate for you, even to hook up a phone, back in the days, you have land phones, right? You become a translator, right, for grown people who are supposed to be giving you guidance. So before we know it, as youth, we're like, man, my parents don't even know where we live. So you can't get advice from parents. So what happens to a youth who doesn't get advice from parents, looks at law enforcement like they're not on their side? That's where gangs form. And the gangs formed back in those days after school, in a time when there's no adult supervision, from 3 to 6. And we've been at the 911 center some years back with the chief of police then, and I mentioned to them, if you guys are having some sort of resources given to society